welcome you to our July 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Elections. I am Tori Silas. I serve as our chair, and we will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 3 p.m. We'll take the agenda as presented. However, I believe that there will be a need to make an amendment to the agenda with respect to the approval of the meeting minutes, as they are not presently available. And so, that being the case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment that the approval of meeting minutes for our June 12th and June 29th meetings be postponed until the August meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to amend the agenda to postpone approval of meeting minutes until our August meeting. All of those in favor? The motion passes unanimously, noting for minutes purposes that Ms. Efrat did not vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, public comment. I note that we did not have anyone sign up for virtual public comment. I believe we do have individuals that have signed up for in-person comment. Thank you, Carla. We have 5 individuals that have signed up for public comment. The allotted time is 5 minutes per speaker. Ms. Grubbs.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time here today. My name is Sally Grubbs. I'm a Cobb County resident, and I'm the chair of the Cobb County Republican Party. I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that when you voted, Mr. Bruning's vote was blank, and it showed up as Miss Efrat. Was I the only one that noticed that?
You identified it as a state.
Yeah, when y'all did the,
Understood. CP, will you turn his on and allow for a vote?
It was on, so the names were switched out,
yeah.
so I need to switch it in the system,
Okay.
to make sure it's right. So
Okay.
can y'all do the vote if you're in and just raise your hands on this one? And
Okay, certainly. I did note when I acknowledged the vote that the vote was unanimous, with the exception of Ms. Efrat, who is not here. But I do appreciate your bringing that to our attention.
I just
Ms.
thought from
Grubbs.
anybody watching, they might want to know.
Understood. Hence the reason why I stated it out loud. But go right ahead.
Okay. I'd like to read from the Official Code of Georgia, Section 21-2-70, powers and duties that are given to the supervisory boards and officers and the superintendents. If you refer to subparagraph 15B, it includes your oath, which says, in the case of boards of elections, each member of the board shall take an oath in the following form upon becoming a member of the board, which shall apply to all primaries and elections conducted by the board throughout each person's tenure on the board. I, state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will, as a member of the Board of Elections, duly attend all ensuing primaries and elections during the continuance thereof, that I will do the best of my ability to prevent any fraud, deceit, or abuse in carrying on the same. I will make a true and perfect return of such primaries and elections, and that I will at all times truly, impartially, and faithfully perform my duties in accordance with Georgia laws to the best of my judgment and ability. Also noted is the agreement to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Georgia, and in Article 2, Section 1 of the Georgia Constitution, elections are by the people, shall be by secret ballot. It's been no secret that I've had, along with a bipartisan group of people, we've had issues with the BMDs displaying people's votes in public. I've previously filed election board complaints about that, that they are not properly secured. But that all leads into the fact that, as we all know, the Halderman report has been released, and the redacted report had enough evidence in there that we needed to stop and reassess the way we vote. I am calling for paper ballots along with hand counting our ballots because our election system is a mess. It's a mess from our poll books, from our election records, the integration from with ENET, with Garvis. We have nothing that we can depend on, and it, in my view, is a constitutional crisis to not guarantee people their right to cast a vote with confidence. I also want to state that you also have a fiduciary responsibility to inform the county of the cost of compliance with any changes to the Dominion voting system. Therefore, they're responsible for the machines, but there's lots of other things that go into the machines, which includes the printers. With the upgrade on the Dominion voting system for any patch, which is not really a patch, it's a completely new system, there needs to be accountability. So I would like to know what you as a board are going to do to make an assessment of the cost increases and expense to Cobb County citizens to do any changes. Again, I don't agree with them because I believe that we do need to cast paper ballots and that we do need to hand count the ballots in a proper form. And so I'm asking if you are making any contingency plans considering the fact that our system is completely corrupt as it is at this moment in time. I would also like to know, again, your duty is to the citizens of the county. Have you read the Halderman report? Are you concerned about it? Are you working with the Secretary of State? I think the citizens of Cobb County deserve to hear from our board as to the cost, what your intentions are, and what you're doing to work with the Secretary of State on this matter. Thank you very much.
Ms. Rosman?
Good afternoon. Christine Rosman, Cobb County. I'm going to reiterate, too, about the Halderman report. Since it was released, everyone that I've talked to, regardless of which side of the aisle, is concerned about the security of the Dominion machines, and that's what the Halderman report addresses. Some people are saying, I don't trust it, I'm not even going to vote. That's not what we want. I'm sure that's not what you want. That's not, as a voter, what I want, because at that point, then we're nothing more than a banana republic if we can't trust our voting system. Our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, is refuting the Halderman report and instead is relying on the MITRE report, which was actually funded by Dominion. So I think that puts makes all of us pause. The Halderman report had 29 cybersecurity experts write to the CEO of the MITRE and ask them to retract it as it was full of false information. So that MITRE report is very questionable. So Georgia law 21-2-34 states that if using the machine is impractical, that you can consider in an emergency is to use paper ballots. And a lot of people on both sides, again, of the aisle, are pushing for paper ballots based on all the information about the vulnerabilities on the Dominion equipment, which would be basically that the BMD system is susceptible to cyber attacks and found validated several major vulnerabilities. So, and this is coming from CISA, which is the Homeland Security, Cyber Security and Infrastructure Agency. So this does definitely cause pause, and I think that it's not just Cobb County. We're looking at pretty much every state is also having some real issues with the Dominion or any kind of electronic machine. And, what we want, it's a nice tagline, easy to vote, so nobody's disenfranchised from voting. Everybody that's legally able to vote should be able to vote. But also is that we need to make sure that, people that aren't legal, like that are dead, don't get to vote. And so we need to make it hard to cheat. I talk politics with my physician when I go annually, and the last time he's like, so what are your thoughts on the voting, Dominion and whatever? And I said, I'm all for paper ballots. And he said, well, my wife and I are doctors, and it's very inconvenient, for us to vote on one day. And I said, France seems to be able to do it. I think the state of Georgia can. Surely Cobb County can, because, when we're looking at convenient and inconvenient, I will tell you that Marxism and a banana republic are really, really inconvenient. Thank you.
Mr. Norris, Hugh Norris.
Good afternoon, Hugh Norris, 25-year resident of Cobb County. I'm not going to take my 5 minutes. It would be, I can't exceed what we've already heard, but I also want to address the Haldeman report. And I'm going to recite briefly from a website called the Gateway Pundit. Hopefully you're all aware of that. The headline is, Big, the Haldeman report reveals Georgia's Dominion voting machines can be hacked. Votes can be changed, elections can be altered. And yet, the Secretary of State, Raffensperger, hid the report and now will not install security patches for the 2024 election. In the article against the Haldeman report, and it was authored by a fellow named J. Alex Halderman, he actually comes from the left side of the aisle. This truly is a bipartisan issue. Here's Halderman. Astonishingly, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who has been aware of our findings for 2 years, these findings were suppressed and hidden by Raffensperger and Judge Totenberger. She sealed them and hid them. Astonishingly, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who has been aware of our findings for 2 years, just announced that the state will not get around to installing Dominion's security patches until after the 2024 election. And Haldeman goes on, the known breaches in Georgia would be sufficient to uncover and exploit every vulnerability we found, and likely others we missed. Yet MITRE's report, which comes out of Raffensperger's office, and that would be good for the John, yet MITRE's risk assessment assumes that Georgia perfectly protects the equipment from illicit access across all its 159 counties. I guess my question is, what is this body going to do to protect and defend the sanctity of the vote in Cobb County, Georgia? What is this body going to do immediately? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Elizabeth Marchioni.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Elizabeth Marchioni. I've been a resident of Cobb County, Georgia for 38 years. I'm here today. I just am curious when we will be hiring a new director of elections. I had seen that you announced a search for a director of elections back in January of this year. It is now 7 months later, and we still don't have a director of elections. I sent an open records request in the spring, and the county, y'all responded that at the time you didn't have any information. I sent another open records request about 3 weeks ago, and Chairwoman Silas kindly called me and responded and said, as of 2 weeks ago, that y'all didn't have anyone that you were prepared to hire at that time, and you and she was going to direct my open records request to the legal department for an actual response in writing. I have yet to get that, so I don't know when you're going to have any candidates, when you're going to hire. It's been a long time. We have elections coming around the corner. We know that it's hard to ramp up and get people up to speed on elections. Heck, I just was involved in elections at lower levels, as a poll worker, watcher, et cetera. And I know that even that is hard to, with lots of election detail to catch up on. And I'm just wondering, when will we have a new director of elections? This is important. Election integrity is important. I agree with all of the speakers that have come before me. And this is important. When are we going to have that director of elections? And when will I get my official response to my ORR? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marchioni. And finally, Mr. Sam Henderson.
Hi, thanks to the Board of Elections for hearing from all of us citizens in Cobb County. Welcome back to returning members, welcome to new members, and thank you for the work you do on our shared behalf. I certainly join many of my fellow citizens in expressing concern about election security and urge the board to act with every kind of dispatch you are able to muster to look at security. I'll say I'm sure it's confusing in that some of the very people worried about some reports now, nationally speaking, are currently being disbarred or prosecuted for spreading false rumors of election fraud in the last election. So thank you for working in a crossfire and a political swirl. I'm here to say I appreciate and hope we'll continue the push to have as many registered, eligible voters in Cobb County as possible to vote. I love the comment that it's a banana republic if people don't get to vote and they can't trust their votes. I was surprised in the last election or two how hard the push was against extended voting hours. Almost as if, like totalitarian countries, we really didn't want very many people to actually have their vote cast and expressed. I have a advanced age father who just passed away a few months ago, and one of the last things he did last fall before he passed away was asked my siblings and me to carry his vote to the polls because of curtailed locations and because of curtailed hours for using those and making deposits. He almost didn't get to vote. I've seen the need for extended voting from the inside a couple of years ago when I was fighting cancer. The people that worked in the healthcare system, all of them strained and oftentimes working 12-hour shifts, did not have any opportunity to vote during normal weekday voting hours, nor did the people who had to keep their kids. So I'm thrilled that in the last election we had extended voting hours, including Sunday. We were assured that that probably wouldn't be utilized, and when a family member went to Cobb County Sunday voting, she found long lines of people, and we're told that all the hours of that Sunday election, there were people utilizing their democratic right and need to have their vote heard and to cast their vote. Thank you for everything you can do to allow as many opportunities as possible for every registered voter to cast their vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson, and condolences on the passing of your father. That concludes the public comment portion of our meeting. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the amended agenda, that is, new business. I believe, Ms. Hamilton, you'll be providing information to us, perhaps in concert with Ms. Pringle, with regard to an update with regard to polling locations as well as precincts, boundaries.
Good afternoon. So in our August meeting, we want to bring to the attention of the board some precinct boundary changes and some location changes due to cities requesting that their precincts be combined down to one, that's Austell and Ackworth, and also for Smyrna 3A and 3B to be combined to one, to be Smyrna 3A. That's our precinct boundary changes, and with those changes, you will also have location changes. Smyrna also conducted some redistricting, and so we'll have to do some precinct boundary changes on those as well. By law, we have to publish it for 30 days in the legal organ, so we plan to publish this Thursday, July 14th, to be voted on by the board on the August 14th meeting, and then they have to go before the county, the precinct boundary changes have to go before the county commissioners, and so therefore we'll ask for that to be done on August 22nd. And we have reached out Ackworth. There may be a change in Ackworth. We reached out to their city clerk this morning because the combining of all three, Ackworth 1A, 1B, and 1C, will cost 15,000 voters in a polling place. We have suggested that that is a little bit outside of our realm. We usually try to have at least 5,000, no more than 5,000 in a polling place. And so we've reached out to Ackworth with some suggestions. Their governing authority is out of the office on business until tomorrow. So she has planned to get back with us by Friday with an update as to how they would like to proceed.
Okay. Did you have anything further to report?
No, ma'am.
I do have a few questions. I don't know if my colleagues have questions. I always defer to them to go first. No. And I think, go right ahead. Yes, colleagues go first.
Okay, so regarding the Ackworth. Oh, sorry. Regarding the Ackworth situation, do we have any, we haven't had any contact with them, but they want to take their three locations and make one location.
Correct. In their past practices, they've always taken Ackworth 1B, 1A, 1B, 1C, and put it into one polling place for municipal elections and runoffs only.
Okay, so this has happened previously.
Correct.
How many voters was that previous? Were we at the 15,000?
I don't think it was 15,000 in 2021. Okay, it was not that many.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what Kara,
She
I
said
apologize for interrupting.
She tried to give a number, but.
Approximately?
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't that many that actually came to the polling location to vote when we combined them like that. And advance voting, there was probably maybe 6,000 to 7,000 that advance voted, approximately.
Thanks. I feel like I just wanted some perspective on if we'd done this in the past. It seems like an awful lot to be putting into one location. I assume that that might be something they want to do from a cost savings perspective.
Yes, yes. And so when we spoke with Ms. Russell today, she did say that she would like, that they would like for it to be in the one location. They didn't feel like that it would not be an issue, but we let them know that we thought that would be better for them to consider even a second location.
Okay, so right now, though, what we're looking at in publishing is just the one?
Correct.
Yes.
That is my understanding, yes, because as it's been described to me, these are municipal elections. Obviously, we administer the municipal elections at the municipality's request. And because the rule of thumb, or really the law, 1 BMD per 250 registered voters in a polling location does not apply here, we have deferred to the request of, as I understand it, in prior municipal elections, we have deferred to the request coming from the city manager or city clerk.
Yes,
Correct?
correct.
In this particular instance, in having the conversation with Ms. Hamilton and Ms. Pringle, I, like you, felt that 15,000, understandably so, that maybe not all 15,000 have come and voted, but there are over 15,000 registered voters across these 3 polling locations, and I just don't believe it is in line with what we would recommend as the individuals that are going to be administering the election, that we should have any one location that if all 15,000 were to show up, they're required to vote in one location.
And I guess I would recommend that we as a board put that in writing, or, you know, as the staff in charge, that there's something in writing that documents that this, even if we don't have control over that, but that we should document that this is not the preferred route. Even if it sounds like a
Correct,
second
yes.
location would be ideal.
Yes.
And I haven't looked at it on the map, you know, how that, you know, spatially, you know, shakes out. But I do think it's important that we document, or that we're on the record saying that that's not the preferred route for this election cycle.
And that's the conversation Ms. Hamilton, myself, and Dr. Gibson had on last week, in as much, yes, place a phone call to her, but then or to the city manager or city clerk, and then also follow up with an email providing our guidance to the extent that we're obviously administering the election on their behalf.
Great. So before we publish, we should have some sort of answer. Since today's Monday, we don't have to go to press till Friday, right?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Or Thursday.
I misspoke and said Friday, Thursday.
Okay.
So,
actually, I would
we
have
would
to do
have to,
tomorrow.
Carol's saying she'd have to have it tomorrow to go into,
Friday.
Thursday's
Okay.
newspaper to make the 30-day deadline, so we would have to have a special called meeting, if they
If we
choose
change
to
this
go. Yes,
notice?
correct.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and that's the same with the city of Powder Springs. They are in the process of redistricting, and it won't be until they're gonna vote on July 17th. I did talk with the city manager this morning of Powder Springs and let her know the impact that will have, and she is gonna speak with her city attorney to see what adjustments they can make to those redistricting, plans.
I have a question.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're good.
It would be really helpful to have historical information. If in fact this has been done before and it has worked, then, you know, it'd be one thing if they had previously had 8,000 and suddenly now we have 15,000. But if before they had 14,000, now we're at 15,000, I don't see where we have big concern. But without the data, we don't know. And the other question is, what was the actual turnout? You know, how many votes?
We'll have to get that and send it to the board.
Right, please.
Yes, sir.
The last question is, in these locations, we are running advanced voting for three weeks, right?
That will be something the board should probably vote on in August, September, but there will be advanced voting, yes.
Okay, but I mean, advanced voting, as I understand by code, is 3 weeks, isn't it, correct?
Correct, yes.
So there's a substantial amount of advanced voting time. Would that location be at the same location as these combined precincts? In other words, if there's a location, people have 3 weeks to go to, you know, that's a pretty large amount of opportunity.
And I don't think it's at the proposed location, as I remember, it's not the same location as the election day location.
Okay, if you could just let us know what the locations were the last time.
Okay.
And so we have a real picture of the impact of this.
Sure.
I believe that information is generally provided, as they indicated, in either August or September. We usually vote on the advanced in-person polling locations as well as the schedule 2 months prior to the start of AIP, advanced in-person voting. But yes. Okay.
Thanks.
Anything further?
No.
Does anyone else have additional questions? Ms. Fisher?
Actually, I do have a question. Is this for the entire city council, or how many actual positions will be elected during?
I believe it's the mayor and
The
three
mayor and
other
three
city
other
councils.
cities, right.
It's the
Yes.
mayor and 3
It-
other city council seats. That's
So
what I
it's
believe.
all members of the council?
No,
No, it would just be the 3 and
Three,
then the mayor,
the mayor.
but I guess it would.
Qualification
But
begins in
everybody else-
August, correct?
Everybody.
Yes.
qualification for the municipal elections begins in August, right?
That's right, yes.
So
August
it's
21st.
for the mayor and 2 council
Three
members?
council
members.
Three
members.
council members.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone have further questions on this matter? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda. So as of June 30th, obviously, the composition of the board changed in as much that we now have two members, two new members that is Ms. Efrat. CP, has she been able to join as of yet?
So there's a whole technology issue.
Okay. I did not want to exclude her, so obviously I just wanted to confirm.
Back to it or? Sorry, I don't know if we want to come back to it, but I guess the IT switched from WebEx to something else.
WebEx is having issues, so we're communicating now, trying to figure out if there's a workaround.
Okay.
So it's a WebEx issue?
Yeah,
Okay.
apparently it's not connecting for whatever reason.
Okay, great. And Ms. Fisher has joined. I'll go ahead and set the stage. In July of 2021, when the Cobb County Board composition changed, we elected officers. Those officer positions, the term does not run contiguous with the terms of each of us that are on the board. And so at this time, in as much that we have two new board members, one of which is replacing a vice chair, or replacing the person that served as vice chair, it's necessary at this meeting, as we did in July of 2021, to elect officers to serve. And I believe it would be appropriate to attempt to wait until Ms. Efrat is able to join us. But then the flip side of that is I don't want us to leave this meeting without having voted in the event that Ms. Efrat is not able to join us. So, Greg, do you have any position on that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So that being the case, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is old business, and it's appropriate to make reference to the director search. For those that joined us, or for that matter, that tuned in during our special called meeting that took place on June the 29th, at the conclusion of that meeting, when this board, or the predecessor board, came out of executive session, it was made, we made the public aware that notwithstanding the fact having gone through a search process, having posted the position, interviewed applicants, we did not identify an applicant that we felt was had the requisite skills and or was a good fit for the office or for the position of elections director. And it was during the course of that statement at the end of the meeting that was held on June 29th that we indicated that we would restart the search process, inasmuch that we also acknowledge that there have been other positions within Cobb County where they've undergone a similar process. I think most recently our public safety director for the county. It took, for lack of a better way of putting it, a couple of bites at the apple, and we find ourselves in a similar circumstance. And I don't know as to whether any of my colleagues have anything further to add, either old business or board member comments on this topic. No. The one thing that I would add is that when we initially were advised by Ms. Eveler that she was intending to retire, we indicated that we would most likely, or we had every intention of engaging a search firm. We subsequently ended up working with Cobb County HR to conduct that search. Again, we've noted that the search was not fruitful to the extent that we identified a candidate that we wanted to hire to serve as director. And so it is our intent to engage a search firm to facilitate this search and recruitment process. I spoke with our director of procurement, the Cobb County Director of Procurement today, and we'll have additional details with regard to what that process will be. However, we do intend to engage a search firm as promptly as possible to assist us with the recruitment and hiring of a elections director. Are there, yes, sir, go right ahead.
I would suggest we discuss that later.
Okay. Happy to, the process, the director search process is a conversation that generally takes place via public as provided guidance, so I'm bringing it up now.
Then I personally oppose the use of a search firm because of my own experience in 50 years of engineering management. Isn't exactly the same as hiring an elections director, but you know, I feel like that's a decision that the board needs to make, and the board
And that's why I'm raising it.
Right, and the board has not made that decision. We have not discussed it. We have not voted on it. We should do that before we say that that's what's going to happen.
Okay, well, I know I've reached out individually to members of the board. We've also, you voiced your concerns with regard to the engagement of a search firm. Well, initially, you were on board with a search firm when we spoke at the beginning of the year when Ms. Evler provided her notice. We subsequently did not move forward with a search firm, and we got what we got with regard to applicants. And if you will recall, Mr. Bruning, there were 27 applicants. Ultimately, we identified 4 that we were planning to interview, 2 of whom withdrew from the process. Therefore, we were down to 2. And it's my opinion, notwithstanding your 50 years of experience, I've got a little bit of experience myself, and I think that the net should be cast as wide as possible, because as residents of our county have already indicated, we're at a point where we are, 4 months away from an election, and we need to take whatever steps necessary to identify appropriate candidates. And we very well may need to do so outside of the context of the processes that we've already undertaken.
Yes, I've got your number. All right. Okay, thank you.
Is that Stacy?
You think it's something to do with the license?
Yes, it's absolutely.
Hello?
So the back end is what you were talking about, and that's what we can't do anything with.
Yeah, like back there where it says you
Okay.
don't have access. Like that's what it gets.
Do we have the ability to mute that? Perhaps. Okay. Well, perhaps they heard me make reference to them being muted, and they've now muted themselves. Okay. Thank you. So, Ms. Fisher?
I agree with Steve on there should be a board vote on the search firm. I think it needs to be recorded with a vote being called.
We're here to do that now.
Especially since it involves additional Cobb County funds, I'm guessing. Depending on the search firm, are you planning on setting a limit of their fee? Because that fee can affect the amount of money allocated for that position as well. If it's the same as when I too was in corporate America using search firms.
Right. Well, the salary is set as what it is with respect to the band, and that same band, and when I say the band, the min and the max, that's set by the county.
I understand that, but the amount of money allocated to pay the search firm is additional funds that would have to be allocated by the Board of Commissioners, not us, correct?
Not by the Board of Commissioners, and we do have Ms. Gibson here with regard to whether the amount to be paid to a search firm, is that subject? That was never a part of the conversation that we had earlier when we were initially considering using a search firm. Perhaps that's changed. Of course, the Board of Commissioners approves the salary of the director. We do not have any type of purview over a budget. And my understanding in our initial conversation, when we were thinking about using a search firm, we were never advised that, and never took the position that the salary of the director would be reduced or how impacted in any way to the extent that a search firm was used.
That is correct.
So the use of a search firm
Would
just-
not, yeah, it would not change the salary.
Okay.
No, I know it wouldn't change the salary, but it is funds, additional funds that would have to be allocated to, I assume we would have to go through the RFP process if we're not using HR's current search firm. So there are additional funds up and above the allocated salary wherever that ends up. So what you're saying is that would not have to come before the Board of Commissioners for
No.
approval?
No, I'm sorry, I thought your question was if we use a search firm, that would affect the amount paid to the director.
No.
Okay, so, yeah,
The
restate.
commission, if you will, to the search firm for their search.
That comes from the county, correct?
So it would have to be voted on by the Board of Commissioners.
Yeah, and it'll go through procurement.
Okay.
So, but I think, I would like clarification. I understand that it goes through procurement.
Correct.
And as much as I spoke with our director of procurement today to find out who we would talk to if this board determines that they want to engage a search firm. However, it goes through procurement, but will there be an agenda item on the Board of Commissioners agenda where the Board of Commissioners would approve whatever amount was to be expended, whether it's, oftentimes it's a percentage of the
yes.
salary?
Correct. So what would happen is we have to first put it out to see what the cost would come back from whichever firm it is. If it exceeds a certain amount, then yes, it would go to the board. But if it's under a certain amount, and I don't have that exact number with me, then it could actually be approved and move forward through procurement by the county manager.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. I will let you know, Ms. Fisher, in speaking, and I only want to address the point that you made. You said if we use a firm that's not currently contracted with the county. And speaking with Mr. Ball, there is presently no search firm that is contracted with the county.
Okay. If the county manager can approve it, I believe that limit is 50,000, so without
That was in my head, but I
without
wanted to make
approval.
sure that's the number.
That's the number that we were previously advised of
Right.
in February when we had this initial
And she can approve
conversation.
if we don't, if the firm does not exceed that amount.
Correct. Okay, I just want clarification because a search firm will involve additional tax dollars.
It will.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything further? Have we figured out,
We have abandoned,
we have abandoned ship? Okay.
But I am in communication. I'm in communication, and I have a string where,
Can she hear us?
she's listening on YouTube, so she's able to watch and she's able to discuss. Stacy's able to discuss.
Okay.
Not ideal, but if we do need to take a vote, I believe that there is record and
Okay.
just keep
Would that
in
be
mind,
some-
YouTube has a delay. And
There
the
is a
longer we
delay.
go, the delay will grow. So she won't be able to keep up real time. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. There is a delay.
just
At the
want-
last meeting, I was looking at the screen, and I think I may have made a comment to you, like, shortly after you voted. I saw you vote here, so. Well, I am perfectly fine to entertain a motion, or for that matter, not entertain a motion, but I do note, having, done a lot of the heavy lifting with respect to the process, working with our HR department to, one, formalize the job description, working with them to get it posted. It was posted for 2 weeks. I recognize where we are now with the process. It's debatable as to whether posting it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks would have netted an additional number of applicants. A number of applicants that, applied, were a bit taken aback by the salary. Again, the salary is what it is. That band is set by the county. So I am of the opinion that, doing the same thing, expecting a different result is an exercise in futility. And that being the case, I believe that we need to undertake a different path forward with regard to identifying applicants and working as expediently as possible to find a qualified applicant to serve as our next director.
So how long will it take to select a search firm?
We were working on a statement of work, a scope of work. Again, scope of work is the agreement that is presented to search firms, and I know you know that. I'm just making that statement for the benefit of anyone here that is not familiar with that. And so we have a scope of work. And speaking with Mr. Ball this afternoon, as I figured these questions would be raised, or speaking with him this morning, the fact would be we would get that scope of work, we would dust it off, make any additional updates, revisit it, and get it over to him and a member of his team, Stephanie Bryce. And then they would source it out. The timing of that sourcing, I can't say, but we don't have to start from square one. That's the point that I'm attempting to make. Ms. Fisher?
I think it's only appropriate for the scope of work and anything to do with this decision that all consideration should be put before the entire board.
That makes perfect sense. There
okay.
is no scope of work right now in connection with this search. So
You said, I'm
It's the-
sorry,
it's
I
the
thought you said
previous-
you had worked on it.
I
so-
had, but
okay.
there's nothing that's been put out to anyone. So of course, everyone on this board would have the opportunity to take a look at it, but would also require expedient review in that respect.
We
by board
can, we
members.
can legally do that via email, correct? And, okay,
Yes.
okay.
I just have a few things. I have a
Yes.
text from Stacy I was just going to read.
Indeed.
And then I'll, Stacy says, "We would need to expand the field of candidates that we don't limit ourselves to a small geographical area." And she does support casting a wide net, as we would with a search firm. And I just want to say for me personally, Jennifer, on the record, that I think, having been pretty involved in the process with the county, that I do think we can do it in a way that is fiscally responsible. We've been through it. We have a lot of our questions already that we used for phone screens and interview screens. Like, I think we can be efficient with our use of funds, but that a search firm might allow us, like what Stacy says here, to cast a wider net. A 2-week period on a county-only website just didn't get us a well-rounded pool of experienced election people. And the truth is, it's a narrow field.
Extremely.
So we want to be able to find the best qualified candidate for our voters, which I think is a responsible use of money.
So, pardon me, but I do have a question. So we didn't post it on other job boards?
It was posted on.
Because I
Yeah, I
thought
didn't want
that's
to
what
interrupt
you-
her, but it was posted on other job boards.
Just on that one election, that one election board.
No, it was more than that.
Several others,
It was
yeah.
on several.
It would be really beneficial, and I hate to be redundant, just to have all this information, if you can share
Of
that.
course.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had conversations and
We
bringing
ha-
you up to speed, but again, this is an issue that's just arriving now.
Those were, it would be preferable to have it in rain, just so.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, of course. I don't want to take the time to review emails to provide you with the list in this form, but you will be provided with the list of the other sites that it was posted on. But it was, I believe it was maybe usjobs.gov, or it was definitely on a couple of, that's actually federal. There were a couple of websites that it was on. In addition, I know it was Indeed and a few others, but I'll be certain that you and everyone else has that information. But I also know that others on the board at the time had that information. It's just a function of your just coming onto the board, Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Is there any further discussion with respect to, as to whether we will engage a search firm to facilitate the process? Yes, sir.
My suggestion is that you gather the information that's been discussed, the draft of the scope of work, and distribute it to all existing and new board members.
Sure.
And that we make a decision at the August board meeting.
Okay, so you do realize, so do you want us, are you all going to participate in the drafting of the scope of work?
I thought you said you had already done the draft.
But I do have a draft of it, but Ms. Fisher says that everyone should have input. Am I correct, Ms. Fisher?
You are, but since I wasn't on the board before, I never have
Of course.
seen it. So before I vote on anything, I'd like to just be aware of what it looks like and Stacy, I guess, hasn't seen it as well.
No one has seen
Okay.
it, because obviously we couldn't provide you with this information prior to your appointment to the board. But I guess my question is, I don't know that we're voting on a specific scope of work. It would be whether we are voting to engage a search firm. So it sounds as if I'm to understand what you're suggesting, Mr. Bruning, we would draft it, invest time, my time, everyone's time, the county's procurement department's time to draft a scope of work. And it's only upon review of that scope of work that we would then determine whether we're going to use it to engage a search firm?
My understanding from what you commented earlier was that a draft scope of work had already been done.
That is correct.
And it has not been distributed to any of us that I know of.
Because we determined that we weren't going to move, you determined that we
right.
weren't going to move forward.
Right, but all I'm saying is, let's distribute that draft scope to all the board members. Let us think about it, and then make a decision come August.
As to whether we will engage a search firm
Yes.
after we invest the time to draft and another month passes by. Okay. You're off.
I totally agree with that, and I just think it's really important to see that scope, because I know some search firms want to do their own interviews. There's associated costs with different levels of searches. Some of them strictly put it out on a board, job board, and manage the incoming. So I would really think it's beneficial for all of us to know exactly what that looks like.
And I guess
And
my concern with that, it's not a matter of us
Timing?
is the timing. It's not a matter of not allowing individuals to see it. First of all, this is a draft that we would provide and we determine and essentially dictate and ask the search firm, we set the parameters for how they will conduct the search. So
This would not prevent us from going ahead and reposting on the Cobb County job board, would it?
I cannot speak to that. I don't know that that would be efficient, but we would have to speak to the Cobb County HR. Essentially, you're suggesting that we would post it. By your question, are you considering the fact that we would post it on the Cobb County HR job board, and then at some point, if we determine we're going to engage a search firm, we would take it off of the Cobb County HR department? But you usually don't do both.
No, what I was insinuating is if timing is of concern, that possibly we can look at going ahead and posting it, or we can always call a special call meeting if we have to vote. But I do think this is pertinent information that I personally would like to have before I vote on.
Whether we engage.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Have we heard anything from Ms. Everett in regard to this?
And yes, Stacy just asked, why do we need to draft a new scope of work if we already had one?
We have one, everybody wants input on it. And we
Okay.
drafted it with, or the draft was drafted with the county
Okay.
procurement.
I assume she'll hear that.
All right.
In cyberspace.
Well, there you go. So then there would appear to be nothing to vote on. Okay, excellent. Yes, sir. Greg, with regard to voting on officers, I presume we are fine to do it in this manner now that we are in touch with Ms. Affron?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
This can't be part of the quorum, but we have a quorum.
But we do have a quorum, correct. Okay. Mr. Bruning, do you have anything with regard to the election of officers?
Certainly do.
I bet you do.
I'd like to nominate Tori Silas as, for the position of chairman, or chairperson of the Cobb County Board of Elections.
Do you want to go through the entire slate, or do you want us to? One at a time? Okay.
I will second that nomination.
It's been moved and properly seconded for Tori Silas to serve as the chair of the Board of Elections. All those in favor? I abstain. The motion passes 3-1, noting my abstention and Ms. Effrett's absence.
Okay.
Because she can't vote because she's not present, correct?
No, she can.
She can?
If she's on the phone, she just can't, it can't count toward her.
Quorum, got it.
But she
Okay.
can vote.
Okay.
I think she's probably delayed, because I'm just waiting for her to.
Okay.
text.
She needs to be in a voice vote. We need to hear her.
Okay.
And that's why, I
Oh,
should have
so
been
we
more
can't.
clear. That's why she can't vote, because we don't have a voice vote.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Can you put her on speaker?
Oh, I could do that. Let me just do that. Smart, Greg.
And that's why, I should have been more clear. That's why she can't vote.
You there, Stacy?
There was that delay.
I'm here.
Great, so I'm just going to keep you on speaker, and you can submit your vote now.
Okay, I vote yes for Tori Silas being the chair.
Great.
So then I note that the vote is 4-1 passes, also noting my abstention. Mr. Bruning?
I move that Jennifer Mossbacher be.
Can they hear me?
Yes, do you want me to mute you?
No, it's okay.
Okay,
I move that Jennifer Mossbacher be appointed or voted on or approved as the vice chair.
I second that motion. It's been moved and properly seconded that Jennifer Mossbacher serve in the capacity of vice chair for the Board of Elections for the next 2 years. All those in favor? Is she on mute?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Jennifer? Any vote?
oh, sorry.
I note that the motion passes 4-1, noting Ms. Effrett's vote, voice vote and Ms. Mossbacher's abstention.
I move that we appoint Stacy Everett as secretary.
Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that Stacy Everett serve for a term of 2 years as the Secretary of the Board of Elections. All those in favor? Ms. Everett, Stacy, if you will share your voice vote, please.
Yeah, I will look.
Okay. It broke up, but she said abstain.
Yeah.
So that motion passes 4-1, noting Ms. Everett's abstention. Mr. Brune?
I move that Debbie Fisher serve as the assistant secretary.
I second that motion. It's been moved and properly seconded that Ms. Debbie Fisher serve a term of 2 years as Assistant Secretary for the Board of Elections. All those in favor? No opposed?
Aye.
Got that, thank you.
And I note that Ms. Fisher abstained, so the vote passes 4-1. Again, noting, I'm sorry, it passes 4 with 1 abstention. And that being an abstention by Ms. Fisher. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruning. Are there any board comments that we need to take up?
Sorry, no, I'm doing a few things at once.
It's fine. We appreciate your multitasking.
One thing that I'm not, I don't know if this is appropriate under comments or should be discussed later, but I would like to recommend that the board entertain putting together a statement on the recent release of the Halderman report, because there is a lot of concerned citizens out there. I'm just throwing that out there, that we might want to put together a joint statement on where we stand. Otherwise, we'll continue to hear from a lot of people.
Does anyone have anything further to add with respect to that? Sir, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think when we've discussed this before, that the base issue of using paper ballots versus using the automated system is out of our hands. That is based on what Mr. White said, what Greg is saying, and that we don't have the option of choosing a paper ballot system. You know, I was on this board 30 years ago, and we had 100% paper ballots. I thought it was a great system. I still think it's a great system. But the legislature who chooses the statewide system didn't go that way. And we can disagree with them all we want, but we can't override what their decision was. And they really are the only people, the only body that can make a change. And it doesn't matter what our individual opinions are about paper ballots or this system or that system. They have chosen, and until they unchoose, I don't see what we can do about it. So, right, we have to follow the law. Simple, simple.
I agree with that. I just think it would be handy if we had a statement in writing that we can either post on the website or give to the papers or whatever, because law is the law. And whether it's changed or not, it won't be changed in time for any election soon, I'm guessing. So I just think it would be probably beneficial to have that out there where we stand, handcuffed to the law. So
just so that I'm clear, the statement would be that we follow the law, but it wouldn't take a position with respect to the Halderman report, because I think those are two different things. And that's just my opinion.
Well, the statement would be in reference to all the questions surrounding the Halderman report, the MITRE report, the rebuttal to the MITRE report.
Right.
The law is stated, 21-2-300. I think it would be beneficial to have that.
Okay, so it's not with respect to the Halderman report specifically, because as you've just noted, there are other reports. This would be with regard to a question of paper ballots versus use of electronic, voting machines.
Correct.
Because the Halderman report, yes, it speaks to electronic voting machines, but speaks to other things specific to that. I just want to be clear that we're not taking a position on the Haldeman report, or is that your suggestion?
No, it is not my suggestion. Our Secretary of State has taken a position on the Haldeman report and has favored the MITRE report over the Haldeman report, which is, I think, one thing that has created a lot of confusion. And I think it's our responsibility to assure people we're aware of the report. I think it's our responsibility to follow the law. So putting out a public statement on where we stand, I think is at least showing Ernst towards transparency on where this board stands.
Okay.
So,
With regard to following law, I just don't want us taking a position where we stand on any report, or at least that would be my opinion, and that's why I probably am beating a dead horse, but I just want to be certain that we're on the same page with regard to the position we're taking, or what our stance is.
well, the reason I called it the Haldeman report rather than the MITRE report is that Judge Tuttenberg has taken a position in Curling versus Rassenberger on the Haldeman report. That's why I called it the Haldeman report, because that was their finding,
Right,
if I'm not mistaken.
certainly, but in
So-
taking a position, we are not taking a position on a report. Haldeman, MITRE, or
You're taking a
otherwise.
position on the concerns
Okay.
of the release of the Haldeman report and just making a public statement that we're bound to uphold the law.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Anything further? Okay. So that concludes board member comments. Our next scheduled meeting, regular meeting, is set for August the 14th at 3 p.m. here in the BOC room. I do note that there is a need for us to go into executive session, and we'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to move into executive session. All of those in favor? Okay. Aye. The motion passes unanimously. So for those of you that have not previously joined us, when this board moves, as with any board, when we move into executive session, all of the members of the public, as well as individuals from the county that are not necessary for the discussion, are required to vacate the BOC room. Good afternoon. We will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded to come out of executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously with a voice vote from Ms. Efrant. Now that we are out of executive session, are there any motions that we need to entertain?
Yes, this is Jennifer Mossbacher, and I move that we appoint Gary Miller as interim election director and that we agree to hire a national search firm to restart the permanent election director search.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded, excuse me, to hire Gary Miller to serve as interim elections director and for us to hire a national search firm to restart the process to hire a permanent elections director. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously, again noting Stacy Effort with a voice vote. Thank you very much. I don't believe that there are any further comments. Again, noting that August the 14th is our next regular scheduled meeting. It will take place here in the BOC room as of 3 p.m. And I thank each of you for your service and your stamina in today's meeting.
Especially Stacy.
Yes, Stacy. Yeah. Safe travels and enjoy your trip, Stacy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And yes, the meeting is adjourned at 5:43 p.m.